Hello, everybody. This is Todd Dewey from the hit show Ice Road Truckers on the History Channel. And my source of radio and all truckers news, I go to TNCRadio.LIVE.
Good evening. Welcome in. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. I'm Tom Kelly. We're going to be with you for the next hour talking about all sorts of different things as they relate to making our minds stronger. You know, Dr. Cortman, it's interesting. People will spend a lot of time working out, going for a walk, and doing different things to build up their muscles, but sometimes, especially as commercial drivers, we don't always do the things that we need to do to build up our minds to make us stronger as we face the road of life. And so we're happy to have you with us talking about all sorts of different things. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about loneliness. And I just heard that even earlier today as the number one complaint that a lot of drivers have when they're out on the road. And loneliness often leads to depression. We started talking about depression last week, and there's still more to say on that subject. So
we were just a ball of fun together, loneliness and depression, and we didn't get enough depression last time. We're going to have more depression tonight.
Right. So first of all, Dr. Cortman, how are you doing this evening?
I am very well. I left my COVID symptoms behind, and I feel like I'm 100% back to whatever normal is for me. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, a lot of people have faced it kind of the same way you did. They're feeling really awful for about a week, but not as many hospitalizations. And as we record this program, we're starting to hear things are starting to look better at the nation's hospitals. So I guess we're maybe coming around the corner on this round, but we
all hope so, but we just never know with this thing. This is really bizarre.
And we like to check in with Dr. Fauci, and we asked Dr. Fauci how he thought things were going to go going forward. And Dr. Fauci, what did you have to tell us?
That things will get worse before they get better.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Fauci. Talk about depression. That guy's always got something depressing to say, but we defined our terms a little bit last week, so remind us again, Dr. Chris, what is depression?
Okay, so a brief summary. In order to qualify for a clinical depression, you have to be unwell for a minimum of 2 weeks. And there are a number of symptoms, but the two biggest, most prominent symptoms are, number one, dysphoria, which means the opposite of euphoria, which is low mood, feeling sad, down, blue, melancholic, whatever you want to call it, just feeling like crap. And the second one is anhedonia. And that means a loss of pleasure in the usually rewarding activities where you just don't feel like doing anything that you normally would want to do. It doesn't appeal to you to hang with the guys. You don't feel like going to a concert or a football game or a movie or any of the things that you love because you're just not up to it. Those are the two biggies. There are other ones. Sleep disturbance or change in sleep patterns, change in eating habits. Lethargy, confusion, moving more slowly, pessimistic thoughts, negative about the future, down on self, sometimes suicidal ideation. All those things can be linked with depression. But again, a minimum of 2 weeks of feeling like that.
And that's the official definition. I'm using air quotes when I say official. So that's the official definition.
Sure.
You've been doing this a long time, Dr. Cortman. How much do you...
Nice of you to remind me, yes.
How much do you rely on official diagnosis kind of stuff versus, somebody sits down and starts talking about where they are in life. I don't imagine you're really sitting there with a check mark going, okay, yep. No, I'm sorry. It's only been a week and 6 days. You're not depressed yet. You know,
that's when you hit the eject button and they go right out the window.
So as you're working with different patients, I guess you probably see depression take different forms, don't you?
It's a great question because, as I'm saying those classic symptoms, at the same time, I should be even more inclusive and say things can be displayed differently for men than for women. And things can appear differently for your teenager than for your grandmother, say. And, there's a difference in prevalence rates between men and women and so forth. And I probably should share some of that with all of you. A man, for instance, might be more withdrawn, and you might see more symptoms of anger and resentment, bitterness, than, say, tears, where his wife might be more inclined to be crying, sad. He might be just withdrawn and bitter and resentful and not exactly a breath of fresh air when he walks into the room. With teenagers, you tend to see withdrawal from parents and maybe withdrawal from their friends, a lot of isolation, just a lot of negativity in their speech, in their artwork, staying in really on the dark side with music. And again, just not excited about the things that maybe they used to want to do. Everything they would say is boring, or they would say is stupid, or for nerds, or whatever, just as a way of saying that they don't have interest, they don't have energy, they're not invested in the things that used to matter to them, that used to thrill them and engage them.
What is it about depression that makes it addictive in the sense that, okay, so that teenager, and I think it happens with adults too, they get depressed and so they have a drink and listen to the saddest album they know. It's like, okay, I'm going to take my depression and I'm going to go in the basement here with it. And I mean, really, really feel it. I can't imagine that it's good for us to do that. Is that releasing dopamine and making the brain?
It's another really fine question, and I laugh because it's reminiscent of Elton John's old song, "Sad songs mean so much," that when you're feeling low, you turn on a sad song, and it's absolutely true. It's where people want to go. And in a way, here's the answer to your question. In a way, it's very self-soothing, as is self-pity, as is talking about how terribly I have it, wallowing in my despair and how my bad luck. People love to talk about if they didn't have bad luck, they wouldn't have any luck at all, right? And people like staying in those places because it's self-protective. It's kind of cozy. It's without responsibility for change. I don't have to take on any responsibility when I'm negative. I'm ministering to myself, saying, "You poor guy, your life sucks, and we all know it." Yeah. And I don't have to do anything at that point except wallow in it because it's terrible to be me.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense because that's something that I wonder about even with myself, but, in others too. What is it about being in that dark place? And then if you grab the person later and you say, how you doing? Oh, I'm not doing good at all. What's going on? Well, I'm really depressed and I just wish I was. I just wish I could get out of this. I'm tired of being depressed. And then they go home and have a drink and listen to a sad song, and and stay in the depression. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Thought you said you didn't want to be depressed.
One case I don't remember much about because it goes back at least 20 or 25 years for me. But the one part I'll never forget is that the woman made considerable progress, and it was as if she was ascending from her depression and then looked around at all the responsibilities she was going to have to be a well person. And it was like she ducked right back in her hole, like a gopher or something. They went, no, I'm not doing this. And she went right back into her depression and even admitted that to me, that she scared herself. There's a lot of responsibility in being a well person.
Yeah.
There's a lot of responsibility in being a high functioning person. Sometimes people just look at it and go, it's overwhelming, and they succumb to it. And remember, the biggest link that I have ever seen between a normal mind and depression is the perception of hopelessness. When people lose their hope, Tom, they sink like a rock in water. And it could happen so quickly. Even if it's like the misdiagnosis, a doctor says, oh, this is terrible. And in fact, people only have 6 to 9 months. And somebody hears that and they just drop. And he could be completely, or she could be completely inaccurate, but it doesn't matter, because once the patient hears that, the perception changes and they lose all hope and they sink. And it's remarkable. Gain hope and you ascend. Have something to believe in. People of faith sometimes believe that their sins are forgiven, or that there's a God that loves them, and they can just climb out of a hole because it just, their whole perspective changes. Like, once I was lost and now I'm found, or once I was blind, now I can see. There's a sense of there's hope out there, reconciliation, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, I've got more questions about all of this, and I want to ask you too about medicine, and antidepressants and those kinds of things. Depending on who you talk to, and you and I have not talked about this. Are they overprescribed? Are they underprescribed? Are they a great thing? Or are they a horrible thing that we've inflicted upon ourselves? So I got a lot of questions about how all this works, and I want to get from you too, what can a person do about it rather than just live in it? There's got to be some more constructive things than just living in the depression. So a lot of good questions that are coming up. Looking forward to hearing from you, Dr. Chris. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes right here on TNCRadio.LIVE.
Space in a semi-truck is limited. A majority of truck drivers spend a good portion of their careers living on the road. Trying to fit all the necessary home items, personal products, work documents, and food in a tiny truck cab can be a challenge. Staying organized on the road helps you stay more productive and comfortable. It also helps to be organized in the event of a DOT inspection. The Truckers Network has 5 helpful organization tips for truck drivers. Storage containers. Storage containers are inexpensive and come in a variety of different sizes. Depending on the size, you can fit a storage container in many different places. Make sure to measure the container before buying to ensure you maximize your space. You'll want to use every bit of your cab. Some items you can put in the containers include canned or dry food, water, cleaning supplies, exercise equipment, and toiletries. Some of our recommended storage containers include Iris USA TB42 12-quart stack and pull box, Itemy 6-pack plastic storage baskets, weight trim foldable shoe box. Command hooks. Command hooks are a great way to maximize your space and keep things off the floor. Install a couple command hooks and you can hang your everyday coat, hat, or bag. Here's a pro tip. Use Velcro to attach to containers or different items so they don't slide around while driving on bumpy roads. Some of our recommended command hooks include Command small wire hooks, 16 hooks, 24 strips, Photo Snow adhesive hooks, ultra strong wall hangers and hooks, Budding Joy adhesive heavy-duty hooks, over-the-door shoe organizer. An over-the-door shoe organizer is great for keeping your closet and your truck cab organized. Instead of storing shoes, store your cleaning supplies, personal items, and some clothes. Check out our recommended shoe organizers. 24 pockets, simple houseware, crystal clear over-the-door hanging shoe organizer. Aristocrat Homeware's over-the-door shoe rack and closet organizer system with 24 extra-large heavy-duty pockets. Shower caddies. Truck stop showers are a place you'll often be. Having a shower caddy full of your shower routine necessities will help ensure you have everything you need. Forgetting your toiletries will have you buying some at the truck stop or running back out to your truck. Shower caddies are also great for holding condiments, drinks, and dinnerware. Some of our recommended shower caddies include Greenbrier Small Utility Shower Caddy Tote, 7-pocket Shower Caddy Tote. Labels. Because there's limited space in a semi-cab, most of your things will be in containers. Investing in a label maker is a great way to organize your storage containers and drawers. It also makes it easy to find what you need. Check out some of our recommended labels and label makers. They include Dymo LetraTag 100H Plus handheld label maker, address labels 2.625 by 1 pack of 3,000 labels.
Don't miss Marcia Campbell, North America's trucking sweetheart, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Central on TNCRadio.LIVE.
Welcome back in TNCRadio.LIVE. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Chris Kortman. Happy to have you with us this evening. We're talking about what is depression? How do you deal with it? All that kind of good stuff. Doc, we're looking back over the history of psychology, and one of those classes that I love talking about history stuff, and I love talking about psychology stuff. So I actually did pretty well in that class. And throughout history, there have been those in the profession who have looked for what can I do to give to this patient that would help them in their fight with depression. And sometimes they've come up with really good ideas over the years, and sometimes not such good ideas. For a long time, they were prescribing opiates to people who had depression. Then there was the MAOIs.
Inhibitors, yeah.
And of course, now we've got the double SRIs and all that kind of good stuff. And so, tell me, is this a good thing that we're, okay, you're depressed, here's a pill? Or is that a bad thing? Or does it just kind of depend?
Okay, so first of all, let me qualify my answers to your question by saying I am a doctor of psychology. My license is as a psychologist, not a medical doctor, not a psychiatrist. And the major difference there is that we look to help people without medication, not instead of, but my work does not involve prescribing medicine. A psychiatrist, especially in today's world, that is their work. They will prescribe medication for mental disorders, and the therapy part, the counseling part, that will go to another mental health professional, usually a psychologist or social worker. Anyway, so that said, that's my qualifying statement.
Let me add a little bit to that. So that brings up an interesting question. So the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist is what, $40 an hour?
It's probably even more than that, because they get to see 3 or 4 people in an hour.
Well, right, exactly. Yeah.
They got what that's called med checks.
Yeah.
So you come in, they go, how you doing? How you sleeping? This good? All right, good. Because I'm going to give you the same amount. Should we change anything? No. All right. See you next 3 months now, and you're out the door. And if you try to say something like, well, I want to talk to you about something happening in my marriage or my work, they put their hands up and go, no. Save that for your psychologist. I just want to know how you're sleeping, you're eating, your mood, how you feel on the meds.
Exactly.
And, that's a little bit of a exaggeration, but not much. Not much.
No, it's really not. And so I understand. And to make sure everybody's clear on the point, you're not the one who says, go take two pills and call me in the morning or something. You're the one who, therapy and, hey, I got to talk to somebody about what's going on and dealing with the hard work and all that kind of stuff. That's where you come in. So the question maybe isn't completely fair for you, but at the same time, I'm just curious as to your thoughts on.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to it. I just wanted to qualify that. My response is, sometimes it works for people and helps, and they'll swear by it, and other times it doesn't do anything, and they'll swear at it. And sometimes it actually makes things worse because the side effects are awful, and people report that they're just. You can't take it, that stuff. Can't take it because it makes them crazy or it makes them so ill or some kind of side effect that's just a deal breaker. And then there's this. Okay, so there was a meta-analysis. That is something where someone studies every research study that there is on antidepressants. Now, this goes back maybe like 15 years now. And what this person concluded, and this was an article in Newsweek at the time, but what they concluded, first of all, was that 60 some odd % of the improvement that people had from an antidepressant was placebo, meaning that they could have been given a sugar pill and they would have responded just as well. Some people respond well just when they get on the waiting list to get in for an appointment. Some people respond well the first day they take a pill, even though it takes 4 to 6 weeks for those things to start kicking in, or at least for them to be at their optimal level. Point being, a lot of people respond well just to the notion that now you're taking something that's going to help you. And just a belief can transform somebody. Again, we talked about hope a little earlier. Just providing hope that now you got something. You got somebody who diagnosed it. We have a name for it. Hey, you're not crazy at all. It's just depression. It's normal, especially after a divorce. The research on men of divorce is, lots of depression, for instance. So, yeah, do antidepressants work? They do work for some people some of the time. And they don't work for everybody, and they don't work all of the time. It's okay to take an antidepressant, but don't ever confuse it with a vitamin. They're not good for you. In fact, every system of the body doesn't like those kinds of chemicals coming in. And I sat in a course where the instructor said, look, this stuff's going to take 3 points off your IQ. It's not good for your heart. It's not good for your liver. It's not good for your kidneys. It's not good for your digestion. It's not, but here's the thing. If you need it and it works for you, you're not going to hear Dr. Cortman say, don't take medicine. If it helps you, great. But you are going to hear Dr. Cortman say, don't rely only on the medicine. Because there are reasons why humans get depressed, and we need to talk about what they are, and we need to deal with them in a more direct way, because medication does not provide you with coping skills, and medication does not clean up old resentments or remove traumas from your mind. We now know that we pay a price when we go through painful things. And these things need to be dealt with directly in order for a person to effectively digest them and put them in a better place. That's a specialty of mine. I love treating people with traumas, not because I like to hear traumatic stories, but because I love hearing people put them in a better place where they feel like they're finally done with them. And, truckers, we talked about a lot of isolation, a lot of time alone and disconnected from the people they love. But I'm sure there's traumas. You can't drive 1 million miles without being part of or at least witnessing something ugly on the road.
Yeah.
And, I remember, do we have time? Can I talk about a story?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So a a New York City driver of an ambulance, retired and came to Florida. He was actually on disability, and his presenting reason was that when he would go to sleep at night, he would start to dream, and his dream was he was being chased down the main boulevard in Queens where he used to drive, and he was being chased by every severed human body part he had ever seen in his many years of working as an ambulance driver, EMT. And that was a horrible dream. But I told him, this one's pretty simple to interpret. You just stuffed all those traumas down so you could keep working, which makes a lot of sense. You didn't have a chance to do all grief work every time you saw something awful, which is almost every day when you're an ambulance driver. But, it's like paying by credit card. Now you have to pay for those things that you saw and didn't deal with. And so my treatment plan was very simple. You need to tell me every story from every body part that's chasing you down the road. It was a very simple treatment plan and a very, very, very effective curative treatment plan. It worked perfectly. It just wasn't easy because he had to tell me these stories that he would prefer to have kept buried. But his own mind was trying to push it to the surface because, these things were traumatic and they had to be dealt with. So one of the things I'm going to tell everyone, not just drivers, that you need to deal with everything that isn't finished from your past. I just did a mental health minute for a new version of a bucket list. People talk about the bucket list where you got to, make sure you, climb Mount Everest and go skydiving out of a perfectly good airplane and head to Fiji and so forth. But that's great. I don't begrudge anyone from seeing the world and doing everything like that. But I have a new version of a bucket list. And that is, before we kick the bucket, it's probably a great idea to deal with every one of my resentments, every one of my regrets, face on everything that is still painful to me, still traumatic, that's never been dealt with. Everything that I've not finished, I should finish that while I'm alive. Forgive who I have to forgive. Apologize who I have to apologize to. It's important for me to face those things and bring those things up, because so many times what's beneath a depression is a whole bunch of unresolved pain, trauma, negativity, resentment, bitterness, bad feelings. And they do work against us. They are recorded in our brain, and they do take a toll on us emotionally as well. And they interfere with our capacity to be intimate with our partners, meaning emotionally close or even physically close. They interfere because I don't feel like it, because I'm carrying all this negativity inside of me.
Wow. That's you left me speechless.
Let me continue if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And if you do and you want to ask another question, I have no problem waiting. So it's your call.
Go for it.
So recently, I'm working with this gentleman who he's done great work, and I know that because his wife said he's done great work. I really appreciate what you've helped him to do. This guy was molested as a teenager, which is always hard for a male to deal with that, because it's so emasculating, for a male to be sexually abused by another male. And this is something that never goes away, and medication is never going to make it go away. Has to be dealt with. Anyway, but back to this story. He complains that he wants to be emotionally and physically, sexually close to his wife, and she's not going there. And so I talked to her, and she said, he's improved so much, and I really trust you, and I'd like to be closer to him, but I just can't get past all the things that I remember he did to me and said to me while he was drinking. So she's stuck back there. And I said, well, we have to deal with this. It's never going to get better on its own. Why don't the three of us talk about, he'll deny everything And I said, well, you've trusted me to this point. Let me talk to him alone. And I shared that with him. I said, on behalf of your wife, this is my idea. She didn't even want to tell this to me, but she finally did. And she said, I'm just carrying all this old trauma from when you were drinking. And he said, she's exactly right. You know, I was a real bleep, bleep, bleep when I was drinking. And I'm sure she's carrying a lot of trauma. But what do we have to do to get past that? I'm not doing this anymore. I'd really like my wife back. And so what we have to do is she's going to have to share with him what happened, and he's going to have to validate that, and he's going to have to confess to it. He's going to have to apologize for it. He's going to have to repent, meaning do a 180-degree turn away from it so it doesn't happen anymore, and make amends in the best way possible. It's really important that he demonstrate to her that this won't be happening anymore because, you know, I'm working on me, and you're going to have the best version of me you've ever had because I love you and you're the one I want to be with.
Excellent. Yep. But it doesn't sound like it's easy.
Well said.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier if you just want to keep drinking because you can run from all of that.
Okay. Well, you've helped me get some perspective here. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back in just a few minutes. You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. In part one, we were talking about stress. And I shared a story about how some people actually escape stress by jumping out of an airplane with a parachute. For most of us, that would be an experience that would create stress. So, what in the world is stress? Stress is a specific reaction in the body to a non-specific stimulus, meaning anything can create stress for someone if they perceive it as a threat. Now, what happens when we're stressed is that the body is preparing us to do one of two things, either to fight or to flight. And most of us understand that best when we think of an example like seeing flashing lights in our rearview mirror. We automatically know how it feels when that police officer is bearing down on us and we need to pull over. You know, our hearts start racing and our chest gets constricted and tight, and, you know, our breathing becomes rapid and shallow, and the blood's pumping to the major muscle groups, you know, chest, back, arms, shoulders, again, preparing us to take some action. And if you follow that scenario all the way through, whether or not the police officer pulls us over or is aiming for the next guy, usually minutes later, the stress response stops. You know, we return to normal, to equilibrium. And, you know, it was just there for a burst, that whole fight or flight. That's called an alarm reaction. There was a professor at the University of Montreal, a guy named Hans Selye, who studied what he called the GAS syndrome. GAS, not the kind that my kids complain about, but GAS stands for the General Adaptation Syndrome. And that's how the body prepares and deals with stress. So the very first stage of stress is this alarm reaction where we go into fight or flight. I'll take you through the next two stages and then what we could do about stress in the upcoming videos.
For the latest in traffic, weather, and information, catch the Morning Grind weekdays right here on TNCRadio.LIVE. Welcome back, TNCRadio.LIVE. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. talking tonight about depression and Dr. Corbin, obviously this is a radio show, not a therapy room, and so we do not pretend to say, oh yeah, just listen to this and we're going to get everything solved for you. Can't do that in this kind of format, and everybody's mileage will vary a little bit. But when we think about, so we got somebody out there right now, let's say they're driving a truck from New Jersey to Illinois tonight. And, and there's moving on. They're by themselves. They know they're in a depression. Everything you've said is rung true for them. Let's get practical for a minute. What should they be doing over the course of their life now to quit wallowing in this and to get someplace besides Illinois?
Great question. All right, so you're behind the wheel of the truck and you're heading to Illinois from New Jersey, and you close your eyes. Wait, no, don't do that.
Wait.
Don't close your eyes. No, actually, the very first thing to do here is to take ownership and to say, it sounds like I'm depressed. And even if I wouldn't meet the clinical criteria, I still feel bad. I still feel low. And here's the thing, reach out. Don't take it on alone. Never isolate. Nobody does this alone. You don't bounce back alone. You don't heal alone. I can't overemphasize this point. Tell your spouse, tell your primary care physician, tell your minister, tell your best friend, tell anybody and everybody that you trust that I'm having a problem. It is much, much more acceptable today than it ever was to say I'm struggling with depression. We saw that in the last Olympics. Some fantastic athletes. In fact, two of the greatest that have ever participated in their field, Michael Phelps and the gymnast whose name escapes me, Simone. They were just two people who came forward and said, I'm struggling with mental health issues. And, the mental health world was very proud of them because, thank you, there's so many people struggling, and we need to step forward and say, yeah, it happens to all of us. So the first thing is never isolate. Get help. Ask for help in any way. What else to do? One of the things that can really help people, if this is just, a little tool or technique that I came up with that really makes a lot of sense to me and to others that I've asked to do that. And that is to draw a pie chart. And the pie chart should be of your depression. And most of us know what a pie chart is. You draw a circle, and the circle is a pie, and you slice the pie up into however many slices, and each slice represents a percentage of the pie. So if this pie equals my depression, somebody might come up with 55% of it is this job that I hate. Well, wow, that is so helpful diagnostically, because the person just said more than half of what my suffering comes from this one source. And then they might put 10%, my child is sick, and they put 5%, my marriage, and whatever else, until they get 100%. And then, if I'm a clinician, I have a clue where to go. These are the things that somebody has to deal with, and we have to deal with them together. I did this recently with a woman in her 70s, and she has cleaned up the entire pie chart now. The only thing left for her is a struggle with insomnia that we're working on. But, just knowing these are the contributors, these are the things that make up my depression. These are the things that upset me. Another thing is we want to start looking at some cognitive ways to deal with those things. We have a whole branch of therapy called cognitive behavioral, or just cognitive. And, CBT, cognitive behavioral, is so effective for treating depression now that virtually anyone who has grappled with depression should be getting CBT in one form or another, meaning a person should have to understand how you think is contributing to this depression. It's not just a biochemical imbalance that you're born with and there's nothing you could do about it. The research says depressed people think differently, and that can be addressed and needs to be addressed. We sometimes have to change our thinking. Also, there's a quote that's said in the rooms, the 12-step rooms of AA and NA and those kinds of 12-step recovery programs. They say you're only as sick as your secrets. Keeping secrets is toxic. It's like the ambulance driver I mentioned earlier. He had to finally deal with those things that have been haunting him. I still treat Vietnam veterans, and sometimes we have to go back to 1968 to finally deal with something they've never told anybody about. One guy I worked with not too terribly long ago was telling me stories that somebody else went through in Vietnam. And then one day it occurred to him that this guy never went to Vietnam. Those were his stories. And he projected them onto another guy who never even went there because they were so bad, the things that he remembered, that he couldn't even own them as his own stories. And it was fascinating to see that he protected himself all these years, because that was, the late 60s. And when he was telling me this, it was like, 2017 or something. But all those years, he had those vague images, but they never happened to him. They happened to someone else. That wasn't the truth. That was a trauma he was running from until he finally had somebody to talk to about it. And if you want to heal from depression, sometimes you have an issue that has been haunting you on some level for many, many years, and you never talk to anyone about it. I remember working with a guy who finally told me that he was molested when he was a boy. And he said he never told his wife. It's like, you never told your wife? He said, no, man, if I told her that, she would be ashamed of me. She would leave me. I said, no, she wouldn't. She would be so proud of you that you were brave enough to face this, and she would have compassion for the little boy that was you. He's like, I don't know. I said, trust me. So he brought her in and he told her tearfully, and she just couldn't stop hugging him and loving on him and saying, thank you. Why did you not tell me this all these years? Because it was emasculating for him to reveal these things. But it was toxic. All these years he was carrying this terrible, terrible secret. And once he was able to talk about it, and once he was able to, feel express release, I tell people, and then it was like it was finally done. It was finally done. It was like 50 years after it happened, but it was finally done because it was finally dealt with. And that's if I have an issue with medication, it's this. People will be given medication that kind of makes them feel a little better, or it raises the floor so they don't sink low enough, but then they don't necessarily deal with what they have to deal with. If someone says, take this medicine, it'll help you some, but you got to deal with your issues, I like that a lot more, because medication doesn't make your issues go away. It might just numb you or keep you away from your feelings. A lot of people I work with over the years say, I got to get off this stuff because I can't feel normal things that I want to feel. My medication stands in the way of my feeling my normal feelings. I want to feel sad when there's a reason to feel sad. Sadness is not depression. It's a normal human emotion we talked about last week. That is born out of loss. Significant loss should lead to depression or sadness, rather, because if not, then there's something wrong with the person. If you don't feel sad when you've lost something dear to you, there's something wrong. And it could be anything that you value. This weekend, there's these rumors that Tom Brady's retiring. Well, I'm a big Tom Brady fan. I have a man crush on him, so to speak. I love football, and I love athletes who are just amazing. And he's just someone I admire. And he came down where I live in Florida and became the quarterback here. So the idea that he might retire brings normal sadness because I'm invested and there's a loss to my investment. That's not clinical depression. That's just normal sadness that you would feel. I felt it like when Robin Williams died or Johnny Carson went off the air, or, anything that you're invested in the entertainment world, when it comes to an end, can provoke normal human sadness. But depression is this, feeling low and having no hope and struggling to get through the day. And again, it needs to be addressed. And that's why I say don't ever try and take this on alone. We're social creatures, and we need help to get through these things. Just like if you have a drinking problem, don't take it on alone. Get whatever help you need, because there's, alcoholism can be treated effectively. And the research says when people are sober, meaning they really have effectively arrested their alcoholism, they're healthier people than the average person on the street. They're happier. They're more optimistic. They accept life as they say, live life on life's terms. They know how to do the serenity prayer. Like, hey, if I can't fix it or control it, I let it go. I give it to my higher power. I put it in the God box. Whatever it is they do, they let it go because they know they can't fix, change, or control it. We have to learn skills like that to get over depression. Again, no resentments, no regrets. If you're a depressed person and you're loaded with hatred towards someone, or exactly when you were derailed and the person who did something to cause that, you have to go. If you're in my office, we're going there. We're going to the place you least want to go, because we have to face those things and finally champion them, put them away, make peace with them, let them go. Can I keep going, or do you have to break?
Yeah, we're going to go to break, and we're going to come back and wrap it up. This is fascinating. This is great stuff. So we'll do a quick break. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. You're listening to Building Strong Minds right here on TNCRadio.LIVE. Stay with us.
This blog is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 5 awesome tips for finding safe overnight truck parking. Truck drivers face many challenges in their career, and finding safe overnight truck parking is one of those challenges. After the tragic murder of truck driver Jason Rivenberg, Jason's Law went into effect to help protect the thousands of truck drivers who need to find safe overnight parking. Although Jason's Law was put into place to help drivers, safe truck parking continues to be an issue for truck drivers across America. We've put together a list of tips that'll help you make the process of finding safe overnight parking easier for you. Plan your trip. Pre-planning your trip is something every truck driver should consider doing. Not only does it allow you to map out your overnight parking, but it allows you to map out where you can get fuel and food. Before you hit the road, take a look at your route. Avoid scheduling truck parking in high-crime cities or congested areas. Pro tip. Download the app Truck Park. With over 200 secure locations, the Truck Park app allows drivers to schedule their overnight parking in advance, so drivers don't have to worry about driving around to find a parking spot. Not only is it a relief to have your parking spot booked, but it's also more productive with HOS. Also, if you're a member of the Truckers Network, drivers get instant access to a 15% off promo code to use when booking a parking spot with TruckSpot. You can sign up for just $5 a month. Park early. If you don't choose to reserve your parking spot through Truck Park, we suggest parking early. The majority of safe parking spots will fill up quickly before it gets dark. If you can, start driving early in the morning so that when it's time to quit driving for the day, you won't find yourself fighting for a parking space. Park in a well-lit area. Walmart parking lots are an extremely popular location for overnight parking. Why? Because they're well-lit areas. When planning your trip, it may be difficult to know whether they have well-lit parking available. If you find yourself in a situation where you don't feel safe, talk to your dispatcher. They might be able to help you find secure truck parking. Lock it up. It may seem like a no-brainer, but but you'd be surprised as to how many truck drivers forget to lock up their truck and trailer for the night. So before you go to sleep for the night, make sure to lock everything. Insert a dash cam. Dash cams are a great way to provide evidence if your truck was in an accident or vandalized. It's always refreshing to know that you have an extra set of eyes on your truck. This blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
Be sure to catch the Truckers Network radio show with your host, Shelley Johnson, weekdays at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on TNCRadio.LIVE.
Welcome back here. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. Dr. Chris, this has been an extraordinary hour, and you've given us some practical things to talk about. Before we wrap up, though, how can people reach you and learn more about what it is that you do and get some input, learn a little bit about this whole, because a lot of people who are listening to this have never darkened the doorway of a psychologist's office. They don't even know, what this is all about. How can they learn more?
srqshrink.com is the website, and any type of social media, they can find me. They can call at the office. They can send me an email. I will return email. Well, I'll send them my own email. I won't return theirs, but I will respond to people, especially your listeners, because we're all in this together.
We are, and I think that's depression can be very isolating, right? So we've taken a couple of big subjects our first couple of weeks together. We've talked about loneliness and depression. Are they brother or sister? Well, I mean, they're related somehow, right?
Wow, yeah. The research on isolation is it's mind-boggling. The stuff that I've had the opportunity to read recently, basically saying it's the new smoking. It's so dangerous for us physically. Not only is it linked with clinical depression, and it's also linked with cardiac illness. Not like the Valentine heart that we all cut out or used to as kids, and then we tear them when somebody breaks our heart. We know that loneliness and isolation is a cardiac risk. It's more dangerous to be isolated now, the research says, than to be obese. It's more of a health risk than obesity. That's amazing to me. Just by being alone and having very little contact. And that has all increased during the COVID thing. And I know you've been saying to me that the drivers, they grapple with isolation and loneliness quite a bit. And so I am always going to say, do what you have to do to connect with humans. And I'm going to make a point out of that with depression too. One of the things we've learned about people who live into their 80s and 90s is they have two things going for them pretty consistently. One is human connection. They have people in their lives still that love them and they love. When they wake up in the morning, they don't say nobody needs me. They have people that love them and people that count on them even. And the second thing is they feel necessary. They have stuff to do. You need to be connected to people, and you need a purpose. You need to feel like you make a difference. And sometimes making a difference can just be your dog counts on you and wouldn't live if it weren't for you. And that's enough for some people. For some people, it's grandchildren, but it could be a volunteer thing. We need to feel like we make a difference. When it comes to depression, one of the things I'd have people know.
I hate to cut you off, but we got just a few seconds left. Thank you so much, Dr. Cortman. We're going to we'll pick up from here, wrap this up on our next episode. Be back with us again next week right here on Building Strong Minds, TNCRadio.LIVE. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.